Big Show with Jim Check and Ian Burns.
I'm Jim Check, and that's Ian Burns. And look at this, matchy-matchy, although you got the pink tie. You're looking a little snappy there with that pink tie. Should have told me. I would have went with pink, too. We're going to matched up. We look like twins, except you're the very, very younger version of the twin, right? Oh, we got so much today. We got so much to talk about today, and the internet's blowing up too. The internet's literally blowing up with Fauci diary stuff. We got some of that later on in the show too. Like, the truth shall set you free, and I mean, there's a lot of people. That's a storm. That's a storm coming. And our headline this morning is it finally time to pass judgment on Carney? Yeah, he said judge him at the grocery store, and he's been weighed and measured. And that's going to be a painful judgment if people hold them to that. But I do want to share some of the feedback. I don't have a screenshot with me right now, but I do have some of the comments you can go into our comments there. You can kind of see them too. And then someone says, we talked about bologna yesterday. They said, have you seen the price of bologna lately? It's as much as meat. Crazy. And somebody says, watching from Arizona. Thank you from Arizona. Love Arizona. And someone says, stand up for Canada. And that's what we do every day. That is kind of our focus, Ian and I. We do this to stand up for Canada, and the people that matter is you. So when we do this from the lens of the Canadian person, like the average Canadian person. Because when we talk about the oligopolies, most of the other outlets protect the oligopolies, and they talk about how great it is. But we're saying, like, well, how does it affect you, right? Great that, like the companies like Rogers and Bell and Telus and the banks do extremely well. Well, they take advantage of you, but you're the person that matters. You have all the power. It's just that they have you confused. So we're here to share the truth with you so you can get out there and share this truth with more people, because that's what matters, right? That's what matters. And in Canada right now, I guess the other headline we toyed with, can Canada afford this government anymore? Can we literally afford this government anymore? And we're going to show you tons of evidence that likely the answer to that is probably no for most people. But we're going to start off with Mark Carney himself. This is during the election cycle. And then the reporter asked him, how should Canada judge you? We got it coming.
Barometers such as public mandate letters for Canadians to hold you accountable to?
Well, I think the way Canadians will hold account by their experience at the grocery store, when they're paying their electricity bill, when they or their children are looking for a place to live. So it will be their experiences how they will they will form those judgments, and then of course accountability comes at the ballot box.
Accountability comes at the ballot box.
No.
But Mark Carney's shown himself to be not so keen on the ballot box. I mean, he has a majority government that has nothing to do with the ballot box.
Manufactured
That was done
majority.
in dusty corridors, dusty, dark rooms. But so, in effect, there is nowhere to judge him, is there? We might be asking, is it time to pass judgment on him? How? How can we do that? I mean, he's the master of the universe. He doesn't even need to win an election to have a majority government, What's to be done?
Well, here's some more harsh news, though, for Canada. Extremely harsh news in a country as rich as Canada. I don't know how they continue to ignore this and how the media doesn't go after this. Like, we're going to have the food professor on at 10 o'clock. We're going to talk a little bit about this, plus the media's ability to look the other way, to willful blindness, as Sam Cooper would say. He's going to have enough for a whole volume. Like, you're going to have volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4 on foreign interference, on the economy. It just goes on and on and on. But listen to this. This is from Holly Donald Blacklock's, one of the best outlets in Canada, independent journalism. Canadians are eating less meat, skipping meals altogether due to rising food prices. That's from in-house research from the Department of Agriculture. The same people that shared with us just recently that 10 million Canadians now suffer food insecurity. Data follows figures showing typical households no longer able to meet the Canadian food guide. They cannot, the typical food, they can't meet the food guide. The typical Canadian cannot meet the food guide. Canadians were asked during the last 6 months, have you skipped meals? 20% said yes. Another 7% they had visited a food bank or taken food from charity. Canadians were asked, how concerned, if at all, would you say about the affordability of food in Canada? This is a shocker. 90% of Canadians are concerned, and 70% are very concerned. Those numbers are astonishing. In a nation so rich, nearly half, 48.5% said they bought less meat, dairy, fresh produce due to increased prices. 44% said they cut back on purchases overall. 36% said they bought more canned or frozen foods. Again, in a nation so rich, suffering basically a hunger crisis. 10 million Canadians, we have to remember, 10 million Canadians now suffer food insecurity. Record food, I don't know why the Conservatives aren't on this, like this is the lead story. This should be the lead story in Canada. Absolute lead story in a nation so rich. And do you think they have it on CBC? What do you think? Think this is their lead story? I'm just going to poke it.
I do not.
Nope, it's not. It's all about Trump. Because you got to feed the beast, right? You got to feed the rabid TDS to distract from the real issue. And that story is right there. Canadians cut back on meat.
Well, 71% changing their food purchasing habits because of increasing food prices. That's not a successful, prosperous society. I mean, you can come up with any statistic you want about debt to GDP ratio and these other abstract things that mean nothing to the average person. You can do anything you want to try and defend this system. But if 7 in every 10 people have had to go looking for bargains and drop things like beef, things that they want, they've had to drop them just so that they can acquire enough nutrition to stay alive, then your society is failing. Is that not obvious? Could there be any more obvious indicator than that? I mean, really? Other than maybe like life expectancy or something? What else? What could be a more clear indication that your society isn't working than that?
Well, the basic needs of the human being, food, shelter, and security. Which one is this government succeeding on? Food, shelter, or security? Which one?
Well, they get lots of nice food, don't they? Normandy butter tarts or whatever. Shelter, yeah, they're doing all right. They're going to fix the Prime Minister's residence. They have lots of nice properties, don't they, including the housing minister. And security, couldn't ask for better job security, could you, than to be a Liberal minister or a high-ranking bureaucrat in the federal government. So they've made sure that they're getting all of those needs, but it's just for them rather than for us.
And if you have to go back and watch yesterday's show or even watch the clip on the Canadian dollar, because that is the next straw that could really bring immense pain to the Canadian public, like immense pain to the Canadian public. They're already struggling. And again, when you compare this to our potential, like if we had a pro-energy and if we were having like get stuff done, I know there was that comedian that said get stuff done or get her done. We don't have a get her done. We have a like pontificate and postpone and a war of words. We're going to show you that later. The progressive left has been on a war of words, literally a war of words, and they're losing that battle. And people are coming to their senses, and the people are starting to push back. They've seen that they've been manipulated, absolutely manipulated. These are the things that matter. And then the corporations, taking advantage of Canadians at this time too, taking advantage of Canadians at this time that have these protected oligopolies. You need to tear down, as Ronald Reagan said, tear down that wall. Tear down these oligopolies. Tear them down. They are not the friend of the Canadian public. Tear down these oligopolies. Let them compete, because the Canadians should stop suffering. Like, how can you gauge any type of success when you have 10 million Canadians suffering from food insecurity? And now 90% concerned about the price of food. And it could get a lot worse with the Canadian dollar. It could get a lot worse before it gets better. And nothing changes. And they stand at the podium, and Anita Nan gives away money like this. It's nobody's business. Every time they run deficits, every time they give money away, that's inflation. Government spending is what leads to inflation. Government spending. And this government is spending, even though they tell you it's an investment. How is it an investment? We're going to show you something. They're literally invested in buying bikes in Ghana for other people. That's an investment. That's an investment. I don't understand it. Pakistan yesterday, was it 47 million?
I think it might even have been more. Yeah, it was a huge sum of money.
25 billion to Ukraine.
Anywhere. Enough money to sort of knock up a department at a university, let's say, and hire loads of academics and experts and commission them to figure out a way out of this food crisis. That's one thing that you could do. You could also do something like fund quite a lot of greenhouses or something like that to produce vegetables. At least that might have a small effect. You could do it in one area, like the most nutritionally deprived part of Canada. You could take that money and invest in year-round vegetable growing in greenhouses. You know, you actually could do something rather than bribe corrupt politicians in Pakistan, a country that we have absolutely nothing to do with in Canada. Just a totally irrelevant country as far as Canada is concerned.
Canadians need to push back. It is Judgment Day. Like, he needs to be held to account. This government needs to be held to account. And democracy. The government-funded media, we're going to show you that later, how they're begging for more money. They're literally begging for more money. They're literally begging for more money as they do the work for who? Who is the mainstream media doing the work for? Please share this far and wide. Share it wherever you can. Share it absolutely everywhere, because this should be the lead story on every outlet. I cannot believe it's not the lead story. Ian, is there a bigger story than Canadians going hungry? Hunger crisis in Canada?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about journalism, so I'll have a look and see. CBC, they do, obviously. They know everything about journalism. Gordie Howe Bridge, right? They're still going on about that. As Trump threatens wildfire smoke tariffs, Canada looks to reduce fire risk. I mean, this is great, isn't it? Philanthropist behind Canadian Human Rights Museum says family pausing funding over Palestinian exhibit. Something about whales?
Nothing about, Canadians not having money to eat. Nothing.
Well, more important than Canadians being hungry, a new West Coast pipeline would be devastating for killer whales, experts say. I mean, that's probably more important than hungry Canadians, isn't it? Whales?
$1.6 billion to actively lie to you and act as activists and distract you with TDS stories. Distract you. Absolutely distract you. Funding must be cut off. Imagine what Canada could do with $1.6 billion put into the food. Well, ask the food professor what we could do with $1.6 billion every year. What we could do with that. And plus the other $700 million given to the other guys. So there's over $2.5 billion that could be used for Canadians. Maybe build a pipeline with it. Heavy pause, heavy sigh. Brian Lilly, we'll have to get Brian Lilly on here too. Mark Carney claimed he thrives in a crisis. His record suggests otherwise. Yeah, really, what has he gotten done? What has been accomplished? I know there's lots for Brookfield. I think there's 77 contracts signed for Brookfield. They're killing it. The oligopoly is doing extremely well. Mark Carney's portfolio likely doing extremely well. You, not so much. And then what do they do? Distract here. This is Michelle Farini, the former MP, putting out this piece. You can go read her piece there. Why are liberals so afraid of questions about motive? And, you know, there's an Instagram account there that, you know, like they're trying to distract from people asking, what's Mark Carney's motive? And one of the easiest questions to ask is, why carbon capture? Why another like $20 billion being spent on carbon capture when nobody wants it other than that one man right there? And why? The question is why? That's another story. Why do we want carbon capture? Remember Heather Exner-Perot, all those things that, and Martha Hall Finley there, you know, like she was one of the proponents of it and said, this is not the time for it. Everybody's saying no. And then an oil field company's pushing back hard on it. And then they said, well, you pay for it. And then they're like, okay, well, we can get oil to the market. But how can Canadians afford to pay another $20 billion when they can't even afford food? That's why the dollar looks bad. You know, the dollar is what the world thinks of Canadian policy and leadership and the economy. That is a forward-thinking mechanism to look at what the world thinks of Canada. And there's so many accounts out there right now, like trading accounts talking about the short on the Canadian dollar. Why? Because it's weak. It's weak leadership. It's failed policies. It is basically a failing government, and it's failing its people and the media. And if you looked from Canada, if you looked at the Canada from the lens of the mainstream media in Canada, you'd think everything was great. The only problem is Donald Trump. That's all you would see. But if you step back and look out from a world focus, all of a sudden you say, holy cow, there's a lot of holes in that ship. Absolute holes in that ship, like so many holes. And here's an outlet. Guys like Ian and I, like basically screaming into the storm. Other people screaming into the storm as well. Sam Cooper's, Holly Nolan Blacklock's, Jasmine Lane. How many people scream into that storm and get pushed back on? That's when the public has to start screaming into the storm. Go to the website. Hey, we updated the website, by the way, thereallybigshow.ca. We put all our links up there now properly. There were some that were badly linked because we rebranded everything to Really Big Show. And the store's up. We do have to look at some of the link. The store is up. And there's a newsletter link there as well now. You can go on the thing there. Ian's going to take a look at it in a bit here. Go on there. There's a newsletter. You can subscribe. And if you want to contribute to independent media, you can do that as well on thereallybigshow.ca. We got a jam-packed guest this week. We have the food professor coming on in just about 40 minutes. And then on Wednesday, you have Gary Clement. We're going to talk about foreign interference. We've got some of that going on here today as well. And then on Thursday, we have the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador. Lots of questions to ask him. Pete Hoekstra. That one won't be live, though. And then on Friday, we have Jasmine Lane. And then moving stuff around, been working on it this morning. Martin Pelche, economist, he's going to join us on Tuesday now. I forgot Monday was a holiday. I tried to book him for Monday. I said he's Monday. And he's like, that's a holiday. I'm just like, all right. we don't rest. We keep going. But here's CBC to ask, who's going to pay for carbon capture? The CBC is attempting to figure out who's going to pay for the Liberal government's much vaunted plan to build carbon capture facility in Alberta.
That's the wrong slide. Yeah, that's fine.
It's confused article seems to conclude the bill will be footed by. We had Franco Terrazzano on, and he said, we asked him, who do you think's going to pay for that? And he's like, do you have a mirror? Because it's you. It's literally you. And why there isn't any pushback for this will amount to nothing. It'll be insignificant in changing the carbon emissions in the world. It'll be insignificant other than it'll fill the pockets of the few at the expense of you. It'll
but don't
put
take
further
our word
pressure
for
on
it.
the dollar.
Don't take our word for that. That the emissions, it's not going to remove a significant amount of emissions. Go to all of the left-wing climate activist groups. Just pick one. It doesn't really matter which one. Suzuki Foundation, Environmental Defense, Greenpeace, Greta Thunberg's things, and anything. Just pick one. and have a look and see what they think of it. And they'll tell you. They'll say, this is a drop in the ocean. This is completely pointless. So, you go to those left-wing groups, they'll tell you that. You go to any sort of what would be called right-wing, like patriotic, national security, national defense, or even libertarian economic sort of groups, they'll all tell you it's stupid for their own reasons, but including that it doesn't remove any emissions. Pick your group, pick your faction, and they'll tell you it's stupid in their own way. They'll explain. They'll even do it in nice little bullet points. They'll tell you precisely why this carbon capture thing is a load of bollocks, completely stupid, complete waste of money. The oil companies will even tell you that when they're feeling particularly frank, and they let it out what they actually think about it. Everybody thinks this is stupid, except for His Royal Highness Mark Carney. That's it.
Mark Carney isn't very clear on a lot of things. When you ask him a question at the podium there, he usually goes into a long word salad, first thing, second thing, third thing. Let me come back to that. Like, he goes around in circles. But one thing he's very clear on, and he's been very clear on this: no pathways, no pipeline. And he's said that many times: no pathways, no pipeline. Why? Why is he so clear on this one thing, carbon capture? And then if you go to the Brookfield website, you have to ask yourself why this question isn't being asked. Brookfield, the largest investor in carbon capture. Why is Canada, and he says, the leader in the G7 with carbon capture? Decarbonized oil. Why?
But also read, be masochistic like I was earlier this year, and read Values by Mark Carney. Suffer that. If you're really that keen, suffer it. Put that crown of thorns around your head. Read Values. And Mark Carney in Values, if you read that, you'd think, oh, he must think carbon capture is completely stupid, because he's saying that we need to leave huge amounts, the majority in some cases, of fossil fuels in the ground.
80% of the oil.
Urgent of the overall fossil fuels, yeah. Then he breaks it down into different fossil fuels. But it's such an urgent need to get emissions down that's what we have to do. So you'd read that and you'd say, well, Mark Carney would look at this. He would look at this pathways thing and he'd say, that's a waste of time. 10 million tons of CO2 or whatever it is over like however many years. Like that's stupid. Like, obviously I'm not interested in that. But then, you put Values down, you turn on your TV and there he is talking about how it's superb and it's going to help protect the planet. It really doesn't add up. And this is not particularly mysterious or complex or abstruse. This is just right in your face. This is like the most obvious thing. And yet it just sort of clatters along and nobody seems to talk about how weird this is.
Some people ask how they can help. We have a young lady that's helping out on the island there. She's running our Instagram. She just stepped up and says, hey, I want to help you guys. I want to help to get the message out. So we let her. She just runs our Instagram and it's doing extremely well. So if you want to go follow us on Instagram, you can. You can help by sharing this wherever you can. Subscribing is a big deal, but sharing it like crazy. And if you have some means left, because not a lot of many Canadians do, you can contribute to our thing by going to thereallybigshow.ca. You can contribute here. There's lots of ways you can help, but the biggest thing to do is share the message, right? Get the message out more. Like we're not doing a really good job on our TikTok. I mean, we're a small team now. And because the government put their knee to our throat and took away our voice that we had of 200,000 on Facebook and Meta, they took it away. We haven't been able to use that for 3 years now. 3 years. It's over 3 years now, right? Wasn't it like June of 3 years now that they took that audience away? Didn't ask us, got nothing for it. Just next day it was off. And then they went off like a domino, right? All of a sudden we lost Kelowna Now, and then we lost Kamloops, and then we lost, because we have multiple cities. They just all went off like dominoes. And they just can't access. You live in Canada. You cannot access news on the Meta platform. Crazy.
But you can access ads directly from people like Stephen Gilboa, who was at the Heritage Department when all this kicked off. You can, or your Mark Carney. Mark Carney, his personal Facebook account will spend several $1 million to speak to you on Facebook. But you can't go on Facebook and read an article that might explain Mark Carney's motives that he hasn't revealed himself or something like that. You can't go there and read an article critical of the Liberal Party, but you can go on there and read a post from Mark Carney shaking some hands and kissing some babies and that kind of thing.
We do have hats too. Like you can get this hat, The Really Big Show, and you don't even have to say you watch the show. You can just say you're a really big show, right? You can just wear it and say, and there's like, what's the really big show? And you say, I'm the really big show.
It's a new chat up line, isn't it?
Here's a poll here from Angus Reid. Canadians, do you have confidence in Carney to get a good deal with Trump? I want to sell the bridge to the 43%, because if you still have confidence that he's going to get a good deal with Trump, you might be, as they say, a little gullible.
Quite an ambiguous question, that, though, isn't it? Because it could, the answer, people saying no could really be saying, oh, Trump's too mercurial. That's not going to work. So, as usual with polls and surveys and whatnot, you've got to look at it from more than one angle.
So I do have this clip in here, and he is getting buy-in down in the States. I mean, we need a guy that looks after Canada as much as that guy there talks about his auto workers. And listen to the reaction from the auto workers in Michigan.
But right here in Michigan, General Motors is expanding operations at its Factory Zero. Do you know what Factory Zero is? What the hell does that mean, Mary? Factory Zero. You're going to have to explain. In Detroit, to produce some of America's most iconic vehicles, including the Chevy, well, I hear it's good, Silverado, right? The Silverado, really hot, right? It's going to be hotter after today. The GMC Sierra, the world-famous Hummer. I got to look at some of these. In fact, I said to Mary, how about sending me a couple? And one and only the Escalade. We ordered, I think, 250 Escalades, right? We ordered 250 Escalades.
That's good on that clip. Yeah, he was there in Michigan with the auto workers, and he made promises. I'm going to show the second clip here where he's talking basically to the auto workers here. Play the second one here.
Thank you to the auto workers, the technicians, the mechanics, the welders, the engineers of General Motors, because there's no finer group of people. And it was workers like you who built this country, and now it's the men and women like you who are making it bigger, better, richer, and stronger than ever before. We are doing unbelievably well as a country. We're building more auto factories and more plants than at any time in the history of our country. And someday the fake news is going to be writing stories about it. They don't like to write those stories. That's why they call them the fake news. But for decades, the auto workers and manufacturers of this great state were sold out and betrayed by globalist politicians and corrupt special interests who let other countries steal your jobs, pillage your factories, and loot the crown jewels of American industry from Detroit and all over our country. They were ripping us off, not only in the auto business, but in many other businesses. Every president before me promised to stop it, but none of them did anything. They did nothing.
That's good. There's he was on Fox and Friends in the morning talking about, and we're not going to play another clip of him, and he was just talking about how, that they're working on a deal with Canada and Mexico, and, he goes on to say, maybe you've heard this stuff over and over again, how, Canada and Mexico need the United States, and he doesn't need them. And, I mean, part of that is true for sure, is that Canada and Mexico rely on accessing the biggest consumer in the world. I mean, that part is an undeniable truth, a truth that the Liberals don't want to admit. You know, Anita Nans, the Melanie Jolie's, and say they're going to sell cars into, well, I don't know, maybe planet Mars. I'm not sure where she's selling bloody cars. But here's a reality piece. This was an interview.
Sorry, I have to say about Trump, we can't just let Trump play like that and not at least try and analyze it a little bit. That wasn't true what he said. They're not building more factories than they ever had. That's just not true. I mean, Google it. Go on ChatGPT, have a look yourself. It's not true. So, you know, I know a lot of people don't like that. They get very angry. But, I mean, he's just said something that is verifiably untrue. Go and look yourself. Don't just trust me. And certainly don't just trust him. Go and research it yourself.
On the other side of that, Lawrence Herman from the C.D. Howe Institute. I think a lot of politicians in Canada right now, or analysts, are saying, well, we just got to get past Trump and everything will go back to normal. He doesn't think so. I don't think so. Like I said, all those auto workers, Detroit was hollowed out. Detroit was hollowed out when they started moving factories to Canada and Mexico for cheaper wages. I mean, that's what they're accessing, right? Cheaper wages, accessing cheaper healthcare, cheaper wages. And the factories left. And then they kind of built a system around that. And they're going back to the United States. Whether that number is greater or smaller, there is no deniability that they're building factories in the United States. They're actually building factories. And there's many companies moving to the United States that were building in Europe and different places. They're actually building because they want access to that market. I mean, it's just common sense. They want access to the world's largest consumer. And it's all obvious, too, that most of the legacy automakers, including the Japanese automakers, are not making money selling EVs. So the only place that you can really sell the internal combustion engine at a good profit is the United States. Because they've lowered the tailpipe emissions and they make good money. Honda and Toyota make great engines. They make great internal combustion engines. And where do they want to sell them? The Japanese ambassador was on Canadian TV and said, we only build cars in Canada because we want to sell them to the Americans. That's an undeniable truth. But what he's saying here, the C.D. Howe Institute guy, when Trump is gone in a couple years, they're not likely to go back to what it was. Like, they're going to protect those jobs. I mean, they're going to fight like hell to keep the American auto worker. I mean, it was hollowed out. The middle class in America was being hollowed out, just as it's being hollowed out here in Canada. Globalism hollowed out America. Globalism is hollowing out Canada right now. Right now, it's hollowing out Canada. We used to have the richest middle class in the world in 2014. And now we have 10 million Canadians with food insecurity. 90% of them worrying about buying food. 90% of the population. The policies of globalism do not work.
Well, they do work for some countries like China, obviously. It's been excellent for the Communist Party.
Because they only take part of it. They take part of that.
It's been excellent for the Communist Party of Vietnam and some other countries here and there. Whether or not it's been excellent for America, that is a very, very long and complex conversation. But there is a reason that the Americans invented globalism. There's a reason that they created this system, because they thought it was in their interest. So it's definitely a debate. But I mean, the primary beneficiary, in my view, is the Chinese Communist Party. And I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah. A lot of it had to do with corporate interests, though, right? Because you can offshore, and you offshore to get cheap wages. You literally Apple went and made phones in China because they got cheap labor. And they had huge margins. But
then again, I mean, the deeper you get into that and you start reading about what it takes to build an iPhone, for example, there's a number of very good articles that go into it in extreme depth. It becomes obvious that it's, at least at the moment and for the next at least 20 years or something like that, it is only possible to build an iPhone courtesy of globalization, because of all the insanely specialized companies that are involved in producing the chips and the lasers and things in the Netherlands. Obviously, we know about those ones. But there's loads of these companies that they're dotted all over the world and they do like one thing. And contributes to the creation of an iPhone. So, you know, that it wouldn't be possible to just end globalization and keep building iPhones, because it's fundamental to that technology.
David Eby, John Rustad put this out. David Eby, who's got TDS, exponential, and is running one of Canada's stars into the ground. British Columbia was a resource star, and it is, I would say, like if you're doing this report card, underperforming, way underperforming, and he's threatening now to use critical minerals in the tariff Trump dispute there. When has that worked, Doug Ford? Like, when has that worked so far? Not sure when. Like, I mean, you can provide evidence of where it worked. You know, like for David Eby, who blocks the pipeline. Like, Canada's prosperity is linked to that black stuff that's in the ground in Alberta. That guy stands in the way of that.
Well, although now he's sort of taking it in his stride, it's like it's part of his appeal now, isn't it? Part of his argument is that pipeline now in the oil. It's I think he's a little bit confused. God bless him. I mean, he's confused at the best of times, but I think he's really confused now.
We're going to skip that next one here. We're going to go to Sam Cooper here. And this is, we're talking about these, Sam Cooper, we're going to have Gary Clement on tomorrow, so we'll go into deeper then, right? And we're going to talk a lot about these the bioweapons and the coronavirus and all that stuff here. FBI bioweapons unit seized vials of coronavirus. The Chinese army shipped to a Minnesota lab in 2018, the same Wuhan network tied to the Winnipeg lab. We still don't even have answers in Canada. Those records are sealed as well. The records belong to Canada, to the Canadian citizens. Yeah, we can't have those either. When will we see those? When will we get accountability in Canada? We're going to show you some of this accountability on COVID here later as it starts. The story is like basically flooded the internet. You can't see past it on X. If you're going to X right now, basically it's just Fauci. It's just littered with Fauci. But this story here, we just talked about Canadians don't have enough food. 90% of Canadians think the price of food is too much. They can't, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Here's Anita Anand. How much did she give away in Pakistan yesterday? How much did she give away to Lebanon ski school, was it? Was it a ski school in Lebanon?
That was one of them, yeah. I don't know if that was her. That might have been her predecessor. But
well, Anita Anand's department billed taxpayers millions to give away free motorbikes in Ghana, but failed to provide funding for parts or fuel. There were several areas of relative weakness. $135 million. And
don't they already get motorbikes and cars? Isn't that where a lot of them go to places like Ghana, don't they, when they steal them and send them on the container ships? West Africa is one of the hotspots.
But just think about this, though. Listen to what you got for $135 million. And if anybody's in the audience there, you can grab a calculator because it's going to shock you. This is what you got for $135 million. Ready? 3,196 motorbikes, 266 pickups, and 16 station wagons. And enough uniforms and work boots for 2,300 farm agents in Ghana. Those are expensive motorbikes.
And do you think this was all totally above board and it went to the right people and there was no...
Just do the math,
There was no skimming. There was no, like, connected people took a few and sold them. None of that happened. I'm sure none of that happened. Certainly not.
So I thought we were trying to get rid of all the gas vehicles, but here we're giving them away in Ghana. Maybe Canadians could use the bloody motorbikes. Charity begins at home. We have Canadians that can't afford food. Record food banks, and we're giving away motorcycles. $135 million. Why? I mean, you did that thing yesterday about geopolitical power. What are we going to get from Ghana? What geopolitical win would we have there?
It literally makes no sense.
And it said auditors noted accountability weakness. Accountability weakness. Quotations. After Ghana, farm agents could not afford to refuel the vehicles and buy spare parts. So send more money. Send more. They don't care. No money for gas. Literally, Canada, you're not supposed to drive a gas vehicle, right? You're not supposed to drive a gas vehicle. They want to tax you into gas poverty. Meanwhile, they gave them motorcycles, but no gas. They're the motorcycles with.
It also says here that they selected lower cost, lower quality motorcycle. But it's $135 million. Like, what?
That's what I mean. Do the math. I don't have a calculator with me in my hands here.
So they're not even good. They're not even good bikes. They're like knockoff.
You know what I mean? Like just say, like, you know, if you add the cars in there, like there's, you know, how many is that? And do that math. I'm sure somebody's already done the math there. Say it's 4,000 motorcycles equivalent with the pickups and all that stuff. That's an expensive motorcycle.
And it's also completely worthless to the Canadian taxpayer who's paid for this. This is money that we've all given. We've all had taken from us by the federal government, controlled by the Liberal Party, then given to this woman here. And she's decided that a huge sum of our money should go to motorbikes for people in Ghana, delivering nothing of benefit to Canadians. What could we possibly get in return for this? You know, what? It's sometimes there's nothing to be said, is there? You just have to kind of, you just state the facts, and then.
I just did a rough calculation and saying 135 million divided by 4,000 equivalents. It's $33,000 a motorcycle.
For knockoff, for like low quality, they say. Low quality motorcycle.
Most of this money that goes to NGOs doesn't make it anywhere. They do a photo op with like knockoffs because they don't really want to give that much money away. So they got $135 million. It's a good scam. You take $135 million and then you buy some knockoff stuff and you throw away a couple $1,000,000 in this junk. Take the photo op. There you go. There's your audit records. The rest of the money. Splitsies. I don't know. Where'd the rest go?
But sometimes you hear people talk about how this is important because it's important to like top up the goodwill in these countries, and this helps to basically bribe them to like you, and that's important because then you have a lot of friends around the world. A lot of people say that, but then if you're saying that from the perspective of a small and insignificant country like Canada, it doesn't quite add up. That only works from the perspective of a global hegemon like the United States. Or like the British Empire, for example. It only makes sense if you either have an empire or you're trying to get an empire, and you want to have influence. So this would be really important if you wanted an empire and you wanted a presence in West Africa, right? Then you'd say, okay, Ghana, let's build up this relationship in Ghana, and then we've got our boys there in Ghana, and that can help us whenever there's something going on in West Africa, whenever we need something there. We've got Ghana. You know, that's how these imperial projects work. The Chinese have been doing this for decades now. And particularly in Africa. Most people have heard about it. Right, that makes sense for an empire, doesn't it? So China does things like that in Africa, and then in return, they not only get that geopolitical strength, that depth, so to speak, they have a sort of ally in that area, but they also extract cobalt and things like that, you know, resources that they get out of Africa. Right. Makes sense, doesn't it? You could teach a kid that. It's reciprocal. There's something given and something taken. But why is Canada doing this? To my knowledge, the Department of Foreign Affairs is not trying to establish an informal empire. What are we going to get out of Ghana? that they don't already sell on the open market? You know, like, what is this about? Where's the motive? Where's the sense to this? I really couldn't tell you.
And here's the bigger thing. It wasn't that Anita Anand and her group stepped to the podium and bragged about this. This is like Hollywood and Blacklocks did this with FOIs. They got the information and shared this, because Anita Anand's not going to share this with you. She's just going to continue to spend your tax dollars. Your hard-earned tax dollars, money you cannot afford to give right now. Can you afford to give away more, Ian? Like, are you saying, oh, hey, you know what, I'll send more to the government because they're doing such good work, I should send them more money? You know, are you going to the grocery store and saying to your wife, hey, we can't get that, we can't afford that?
I definitely wouldn't send them money for things like police officers or like fighter jets to protect Canada. Like, that's ridiculous. But if you're talking about motorbikes for Ghana, you know what? Maybe I can spare a few shekels for that.
I just want to warn people, Ian's in that mood today. The British sarcasm has arrived, and because it's frustrating. It is literally frustrating, and you look at it and you say, like literally, there's people in the grocery stores right now putting stuff back, or they have kids looking at the steak counter and saying no, and families are saying we can't afford that. Meanwhile, they take money from you and do this with it. Literally do this with it. And we shared with you, what was it, last week? They just gave to a country that's probably doing better than us, Brazil. They just gave them $125 million too for sustainable infrastructure projects in Brazil, like green schemes in Brazil. I wonder who's going to get those contracts. I don't know, just curious.
It's just demented, isn't it? It's completely demented. But again, this is what happens when this is why I talk about the quality of this country's elite so often. If you have a low quality elite, as we do, this is going to happen because they don't know what they're doing, because they are not high caliber individuals. What else can I say? If you put a low caliber individual in charge of an ice cream stall, things will go wrong. We've decided to put low quality people in charge of our federal government. And here's the first result that we can discuss.
You go to that next slide there. And this is, again, like security. What do we talk about? Food, security, and shelter. Which one is Canada doing well? Arrest of a Canadian working at NATO headquarters, quite serious, from Public Safety Minister Gary. Hey? Gary has promised to get to the bottom of the quite serious arrest of a Canadian citizen in Europe on suspicion of spying. Belgian prosecutors said the Canadian national of Chinese origin who worked at NATO headquarters was suspected of espionage, working with a criminal group. Gary refused to discuss this case. Let's play the clip here from our favorite friend there.
Sir, NATO interns are usually vetted by member countries. What does it say about CSIS and RCMP vetting processes now that a Canadian has been accused on spying on NATO?
What I don't want to do is speculate on this specific case. I do acknowledge that there was a recent arrest in Belgium involving an intern with NATO who was a Canadian national. As a country, we will continue to investigate the processes we have and the security screening. It is an ongoing work that we do, and in this particular case, I think it's important to get to the bottom of what happened, and that is a commitment that we make to you today.
Confident that the alleged spy has not worked for another Canadian government department and has not passed on information to a hostile foreign government?
What I will say is that the allegations that have been made are quite serious. Canadian law enforcement and Canadian authorities are continuously monitoring and will monitor the impact of the work this individual has done, if they have done any work in Canada. But ultimately, we need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to ensure that these types of incidents do not occur in the future.
Again, the Liberal government absolutely embarrassed on the world stage. You've seen Gary at the podium many times. Do you have any faith in the security apparatus here in Canada with that guy at the helm?
the public safety minister, but it doesn't really make you feel safe, does he? I mean, the impression I got there, I don't think he was even being particularly cheeky. I don't think he was trying to like hide anything. I think, and again, this is just my impression. I just think he didn't know what to say. He didn't know
Well, they're
what
embarrassed in the world.
like, he
It's
didn't
like
know what was going on.
it's like the Bloomberg story. They can't refute it because usually in Canada, if it's a Canadian story, they can just pretend it doesn't exist. The media covers for it. But here you have evidence, a world court, standing trial in Belgium there. You have that going on. So how do they refute it? Now they're just like, blah, 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 right? Just like the Bloomberg thing. They're just like, well, you know, you didn't hear it. You didn't experience it right, as Trudeau would say. She experienced it differently. Canada has experienced the Liberal government differently than the Laurentian elite. That's fair to say, right? Canadians have experienced the Liberal government policies differently than the Laurentian elite and the corporations and the oligopolies. That's fair. You've just experienced it differently. You suffer from hunger. Well, meanwhile, Normandy butter.
Other people see that as an opportunity to lose weight.
Hey, you don't have to buy Ozempic. Winning. Now that sarcasm is starting to rub off on me. But this is the guy. We have Gary Clement tomorrow, so we'll delve into this a little more. But it's a good time to get Gary Clement on. And he was in Sam Cooper's book, Willful Blindness. This is all over in the election cycle. Like when we had Sam Cooper on, the allegations of interference in our elections is crazy, the amount that's there. And when Mark Carney was asked, it seems like the Chinese Communist Party wants you to win. They're actually helping you win. He says, I don't know. Let's move on. And the media moved on. Sam Cooper hasn't moved on. But the rest of the media has moved on. They got TDS stories to get out. There must be a quota on CBC. Is there a quota you have to hit on a certain day to get out there?
Well, it's like the New York Times and a lot of those other, and CNN. They all basically revealed the truth, which was that Trump is like the ultimate clickbait. So it's worth it just for the views, to talk about Trump. It's like an easy win.
But in Canada, he's also the great cover, the great straw man for failed policies. Like literally 11 years of policy failure. 11 years of policy failure. An economy that is not Trump. This Canadian economy didn't fall off the rails starting with Trump 2 years ago. It's been in a decline since 2015. It's been separate. We've shown you the charts before. It's been separating, diverging from the American economy over the past 11 years. And it all has to do, if you talk to the right people, they'll tell you, we have Martin Peltier coming on Tuesday. It's policy. It's bloody policy. And the Canadian dollar is going to cause a lot of pain. And again, the winner in that will be the corporations that sell into the United States or sell in US dollars and pay in Canadian wages. Meanwhile, you will suck. I was just kind of like hanging in there and seeing if the food professor is going to call him before we jump to the next. But we'll do this one here. Terry Newman also writes for the National Post. Because Mark Miller, Mark Miller's tweet there and all the symbols. He's appalled at the targeting of 2 Jewish-owned bakeries in Toronto. And Terry Newman sent him an email. Well, I got something to tell you, Terry. We've sent several to Mark Miller. And all we hear is Jiminy the Cricket. Jiminy the Cricket. No responses. Nothing.
Mark Miller's not that kind of guy, He's not a representative democracy kind of guy.
Did you hear that conference,
punching down
Laval?
at people that he despises kind of guy.
Do you see what she's referring to, that Islamic conference in Laval? Did you hear pieces of that?
I didn't, but I mean, I've read about many similar conferences and events that just pass by without any media scrutiny. So it doesn't surprise me in the least. I would imagine that that's true.
Yeah, I watched a couple of pieces of it. Pretty shocking.
But it's, that's something that they don't want to talk about because that's part of their coalition. It's part of their electoral coalition.
We'll delve into this next one as we're waiting for the food professor. Canada could make nuclear weapons quickly and in secret, report says. Oh, there's the food professor. We'll leave this one, I guess. Well, let's see if Nick can get him in there first of all, as we wait for the food professor there. There he is.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Can you hear me?
Thanks. Yes, we can. Thank you for joining us. You're live here with us on the Really Big Show, the food professor, Sylvan. So we appreciate you this second time on the show. You're a busy guy, though.
Well, yeah, I am busy as you are. I mean, we always try to make a difference and make the world a better place one day at a time. So
one day at a time, one story at a time. We started our show today, like the headline was about food insecurity here in Canada. And it's shocking that it's not the lead story on CBC and stuff like that. Like it doesn't that kind of like, we covered, I think, a week ago, 10 million Canadians now suffer food insecurity in Canada. 10 million Canadians. That's from the Department of Agriculture. And then that's not the lead story in Canada.
Yeah, I don't know what the lead story is, to be honest, right now, but I agree with you. It should be the lead story. I think from a food security perspective, things are quite challenging for a growing number of families in Canada. I mean, every month I try to remind Canadians and media that we have the highest food inflation rate among G7 countries. And we've had the highest food inflation rate among G7 countries for quite some time now. And if you look at Prime Minister Carney's record, you have to look at food inflation versus inflation. As soon as food inflation is above inflation, the cost of living, essentially, people will notice higher food prices at the grocery store. And since Prime Minister Carney has been in power, March 2025, every single month, food inflation has been above inflation.
90% of Canadians, according to this latest poll here, 90% of Canadians are very concerned with the price of food here in Canada. 90%. That's shocking. That's absolutely shocking. And go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly why so many people are concerned, because they see it, they feel it, and when they show up at the grocery store, they feel poor. And I mean, basically, let's start at the meat counter. Meat counter economics are absolutely against all of us. 40% of all the money you spend at the grocery store is spent on animal proteins. And beef, chicken, pork, the meat trifecta, all more expensive. And now, I mean, this morning we actually released a new evaluation of food inflation, because we do have doubts about the validity of the data that is released by Statistics Canada. So we actually collect our own data ourselves with our partner, grocerypulse.ca. So we get 8,000 data points every single month to assess food inflation. And right now, I'd say pork is the big problem after chicken and beef, but also salmon. Salmon is actually expensive, 25% more expensive than just 30 days ago. And again, this is something that mainstream media doesn't want to hear about, because often they'll blame climate change, they'll blame geopolitics, they'll blame things that we can't control in terms of what's going on at the grocery store. But the salmon story is very much about two things. One, the currency, because we're importing a lot of salmon. And two, something that most people don't know is that we actually shut down many salmon farms out west off Vancouver Island, I'd say over the last 2-3 years, which actually has depleted our ability to produce salmon domestically, okay, on First Nations territory, mind you. Okay. And so we're importing more salmon from abroad. So we're at the mercy of the American dollar again. And so that's why that one category is pushing food inflation higher. Every single month, there's a story related to policy, bad policy, that is not shared with the broader public.
Our show yesterday was really all about the currency as well, and the currency looks incredibly weak. The short position building in the currency is at a 2-year high. And it is one of the things, it's a big worry for a lot of people. And the people that are going to feel that pain if that currency drops into the mid-60s, that pain is going to translate right to the Canadian consumer. The exporters are going to do extremely well because they're going to pay in Canadian wages and sell in US dollars. But the general population, like the 90+% of Canadians, are going to feel extreme pain.
Absolutely. I mean, At one point, I actually thought that liberal governments tend to rely on a weak currency to actually keep the economy going. And it's not always accurate, but they were two liberal governments that have actually done that very well. One is the Chrétien government in the 90s. If you recall, I think you're old enough to remember that for a very long time, the Canadian dollar was way below 70 cents. And it really kept things going in Canada. And Chrétien couldn't care less about the value of the dollar. And now with Trudeau slash Carney, we're actually going through that. If our dollar was at par, we would be seeing the exact nature and value of our Canadian economy. And so again, I sometimes I wish that we could actually bring that dollar up to $1 for a couple of days just to show Canadians how valuable our relationship with the US actually is, so they can actually see it in real time. But it would be suicidal to do that, unfortunately.
Export nations typically suppress their dollar, but the sweet spot for Canada is around 85 cents. That's the sweet spot. But
I would agree.
Harper actually had it up, I think, in the banking crisis. I think it was $1.10 for a while. We were actually above the Americans for a short while. And everybody at that time says, oh, look at the purchasing power, because it really helps the consumer. Really tough on exporters, though, right? Really tough on the exporters. And I do want to ask you, the main reason we got you on the show, and then I'm going to turn you over to Ian, is that you do tons of interviews, but then you had that piece of that tweet you put out there, which was why I reached out. Some of the La Presse in Quebec has said, don't contact this guy anymore.
Yeah, so actually, I wrote for La Presse for 25 years. As you know, La Presse is the largest French daily in the province of Quebec. It's been around for more than 100 years. It's actually a privilege to write for La Presse, and I was writing for them for free for 25 years, and I was honored to do that. But back in February of this year, I mean, I do 20, 25 interviews a week. And over the last 25 years, I've actually seen a shift, especially in the last 5 years, in terms of how news are covered. And frankly, I saw a trend with food prices in particular, looking at issues that are out of Ottawa's control. And I was often reminding reporters that, well, there are certain things being done in Ottawa that are not helping Canadians. And my comments were always overlooked. And so I basically wrote a piece on Facebook saying, you know what, I think there is a correlation between how media is funded and how there's a growing editorial bias towards supporting Ottawa in general. And so a month later, I got a phone call from François Cardinal from La Presse, telling me that our relationship was over as a result of the posting, which is fine. I respect that their decision. They can publish whoever they want. It's just the reason that they gave me was a little off-putting, to be honest. And I knew at the time, and he kept on saying things about the CBC and how it doesn't reflect well with the CBC. And I said, well, you're with La Presse, like, why are you talking about the CBC? But I knew, as a Quebecer, I know that La Presse and French CBC are like this. They don't rely on convergence. They don't have a television stations. They don't have radio, unlike Québécois, which is their competitor. They rely on Radio Canada to really promote their work, and so that relationship is very important. So I knew it was a matter of time before I get canceled by not one but both. And what was really interesting is that I actually got a phone call from a reporter, a Radio Canada reporter, telling me that they're distancing themselves from me as a result of what I did on Facebook towards La Presse. And so to know it is one thing; to actually hear it from a very gutsy reporter who showed a lot. I mean, she showed a lot of courage. To be honest, she risked her job. I never mentioned her name. I won't. But to do that was really to me was interesting because she basically told me over the phone that she's sick of seeing this cancel culture dominating media, and it's happening more and more. And so I'm kind of doing it for her because I know a lot of people like to bash the CBC and Radio Canada. The reality is that it's the regime that's the problem, not necessarily some of the reporters, because some of the reporters see the same problem as we do.
Yeah, and it takes courage to step up for sure. And like some of them, we're hoping some of the politicians say this is enough too, because like at some point your own morality kicks in and you say this is wrong, right? This goes against what I was trained to do. This goes against. I mean, that's I congratulate you. You're speaking up, right? Because it'd be easier for you to sit back and just enjoy your tenure and just like float through life, right? But you're pushing back.
But Jim, I mean, the difference between myself, I mean, I don't want, like, I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm 56 years old. I'm a full professor, tenured. I'm doing fine. I'm having fun with the work, with the research we do. I don't need the audience mainstream media is giving me. I'm not paid, and I don't really need the audience. I have a podcast. I write for Post Media. I write for Les Affaires. As soon as La Presse dropped me, Les Affaires, which is another daily, a weekly, call me to write a column for them. So I'm writing for them now. Uh, Listen, I'm on the road talking to farmers, to processors every single week, more so than ever. Our podcast is the number one in the country as well. So, unlike the thing is, when I look at television, when I look at the news coverage that we see in Canada, most experts either are paid by the news network or Ottawa or both, or they absolutely need the exposure. I'm neither in either camps. So that's why I'm able to come out and speak out, and that's what I've decided to do this year.
Ian?
I want to rewind a little bit, talking about you mentioned climate change as that's one of the reasons that often given for why food is so expensive, why there's so much food insecurity. Another one is, I mean, you've talked about this at length. I don't know if you want to go into it, but another one is grocery stores profiteering. America, in some nebulous way, is often blamed. And then the other one is the size of Canada. It's such an enormous country, short growing season. So, is it your contention, or could you explain to us? Is that very much a minority of the cause of the prices? Is it mostly policy, or is that all that stuff still very relevant?
It's a mixture of both. I mean, really. So, no, let's tackle a few here. So, climate change. I mean, in my view, climate climate change is part of some of the factors that we have to manage as people in the food industry. Farmers are environmental stewards that have actually done a brilliant job dealing with the effects of climate change over the last several centuries. I mean, I think it's how we address climate change that has been problematic with carbon pricing in particular. I've never been a fan of the stick approach. I've always been a fan of the carrot approach, especially when it comes to food and low margins and risks that people take in the food industry. You want to incentivize industry to adopt green technologies. I am of the belief that we need to address climate change, but we can't penalize the industry and consumers because we feel that polluters, big corporations, are polluting the environment. They're providing a benefit to our economy. We need to be very careful with how we address the issue of climate change. And in biotechnologies, we've seen gene editing doing phenomenal work for farmers, etc. So I have great faith in the food industry to address climate change right now. We don't need taxes to address that. The issue of competition, it has come up several times. I mean, the concentration of grocers that we have is a product of consolidation up the food chain. I mean, there's been a lot of consolidation, and why do sectors consolidate? because you deal with a mature market. Food is a mature market inherently. And so companies are trying to compete in a mature market, and sometimes big is beautiful, but sometimes, and this is something that the food industry is starting to realize, small is also beautiful because people are looking for different things. So recognizing the fragmented nature of markets is always quite critical when it comes to innovation and economic growth. And so that debate is really getting people to think differently about food. But most consumers think that, well, the dominance in retail is everything, and that's why food is more expensive. There's no, if you really want to look and sound stupid, just say that over and over again, that the oligopoly is making food more expensive. In essence, there is no evidence that grocers are gouging consumers. Zero. Just look at the financial data of all three: IGA, Sobeys, Loblaws, and Metro. There's no evidence. But they're not as white as snow. They are to blame for certain issues, like, for example, they are putting a lot of pressure on our food manufacturers. They do. And that's why the code of conduct was created. And that's a controversial policy for sure. But I do believe that the code of conduct, if it works, could actually democratize the food system and could level the playing field, allowing manufacturing to grow. And you want to do that in order for independents to become more dominant. Because right now, independents are being killed. And we need more independence in distribution to allow for innovators to have access to all of us as consumers. Because right now, the gatekeepers are really, Loblaws. They dictate what we eat. And that's not necessarily a good thing. I've lived in Europe for 2 years, and I saw what local food economies can do, and I saw more variety. And when you see more variety, there's more competition, and prices tend to be cheaper. That is not the case right now in Canada.
Yeah. We also see Aldi and companies like that, don't we, in Europe, which everybody loves.
Do you
I
know
wanna
why
ask you
Aldi is
about-
not coming into the Canadian market?
Why is that?
Do you know why Lidl is not coming into the Canadian market? Because Canada is not
Please.
attractive enough.
Yeah.
Why would you invest in Canada when the unemployment rate is rising, when people are severely in debt? Why would you invest in Canada when there's little or no disposable income? Why would you invest in Canada when over 10 million people are skipping meals? Where's the market potential?
I mean, that's such an indictment, isn't it, of Canada, when you think of the countries that they do expand into, like the former
do you know what the irony is?
Soviet bloc countries.
Loblaw, the number one grocer, is investing in the US, but nobody's coming here. And you're telling me it's about retail and competition? The role of the government is to enable conditions in order for investment to occur. We've seen the complete opposite. Our own prime minister, a banker, knows this because most of his money is not in Canada.
Well, on that subject of our illustrious overlord, the Americans have been banging the drum again, as they often do, about dairy supply management. You've just said that about Mark Carney, that you think that he can see through this. I would also imagine that he's very suspicious of supply management. That's just I have no evidence to prove this, but that's my feeling. Do you think he's gonna, or have you seen any indication whatsoever that he's gonna be the man that changes supply management, maybe to get a deal with the Americans?
Any sane politician would know that supply management is not sustainable as it stands. And I would say that I've interacted with many of them. And I would include Prime Minister Carney. I would say that he's smart enough to understand that our current path in relation to supply management is not sustainable. It's just not. And we have a highly uncompetitive dairy sector in particular. So we have poultry, eggs. Not concerned about poultry or eggs. Those sectors are actually quite competitive. Prices are pretty stable and competitive. Not dairy. Dairy's in trouble, and that's why I think they they are attacking the naysayers out there, like myself, for example. They've attacked me for many years uh, through intimidation and things like that. But it's actually what's really interesting. It's happening less and less. Like 5, 10 years ago, I was getting nasty emails all the time. I was getting messages all the time. Not now. I mean, I think a lot of people are seeing the writing is on the wall. President Trump made it obvious, unfortunately. But what I've argued for many years is that instead of waiting for a, a tenant in the White House, why not set ourselves up for a greater, stronger dairy sector based on our own terms? I mean, right now, I just came back from Ireland. I gave a talk in Ireland, in Cork, Ireland, a few weeks ago. I mean, Ireland is benefiting from this dairy moment the world is having. Everyone wants dairy proteins because it's cheap and it's good. And you guys spoke about GLP-1s earlier in your show. I mean, that's why GLP-1s are having a moment, is that people are looking for dairy proteins, and here we are managing supply for our own domestic market. Instead of seeing dairy farms disappear, we went for 42,000 dairy farms in 1972 down to 9,000 now. And if nothing changes, we will go down to 5,000 by 2030. That's the path we're on. What I've argued for many years is that instead of actually doing that, we could reverse that and grow our dairy economy and export and innovate more. In Kingston, Ontario, we've allowed China to build a dairy plant called Canada Royal Milk in our own backyard, processing our own milk to make baby formula. The only baby formula plant in Canada is owned by China. So let that sink in.
Yeah, we did that a while back. We had time for one more question from each of us, because I know that we booked you for 30 minutes and we don't want to go over time on you. Ian, you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I'll just ask something sort of attached to what you said there, because it's very interesting to me. I was reading the data not so long ago about places that are sort of historically, you think of them as being like lactose intolerant, places like Japan and China. They're increasing their consumption of dairy, aren't they? And they're the great prize. I thought that we're trying to orient our trade policy to them. We could sell them that stuff, which they are, they're consuming that at a much faster rate. So it's things like that make me think, Mark Carney, I mean,
again,
he must know.
I didn't talk about the Peterborough plant, but Coca-Cola built a new plant to make the brand called Fairlife. Fairlife is a lactose-free product coming from dairy. That should have been Canadian as well. And so over the last 50 years, we've seen dairy farmers saying, no, we can't sell milk to Europe. We can't sell milk to Asia, to other parts of the world, because it's a heavy product. It's liquid. It's impossible. A lot of people are lactose intolerant. There are no opportunities. While New Zealand is exporting for almost $30 billion worth of dairy products to all over the world. We're actually buying a lot of New Zealand products right here in Canada. If you go to the grocery store, in New Zealand, you wouldn't find a single Canadian product. They figured it out. Why can't we? All we need is a strategy, and we can actually work with dairy farmers, protect the quota system, but make it more open and more competitive. All we need is a dairy sector that is willing to have that conversation, but they've always resisted to any debates about the future of supply management. And here we are confronting Trump not being ready.
Jim?
You talk a lot about policy. I think you were on the show last time too, and policy is kind of blocking innovation here in Canada, and just in competition and that. We talk a lot on the show about oligopolies in general. We got a cell phone oligopoly, the telecommunications oligopoly. We have, the banking sector. We have like the food sector and supply management, all these marketing boards and all that. Why is Canada this kind of like this protected bubble, and these policies kind of keeping competition away? It seems like we're more worried about competition than we are on innovation. Like, we could innovate and open the market up for dairy, but instead we silo and we want to protect what we have. And then those policies tend to benefit the few at the expense of the many.
I mean, it's simple. We have a flawed understanding of what competition actually means. We have 120 marketing boards in Canada. And the worst ones are supply management, are under supply management, but we have FCC, we have monopolies all over the place. So Canadians actually have no problem seeing monopolies, because they always seek protection until pricing is a problem. And so that's why right now, I mean, I certainly don't want food inflation to remain a problem for everyone, but it has really gotten a lot of people to think differently about monopolies, which is a good thing. So I do think when you go to the US, it's pretty darn clear where they stand on competition. They hate monopolies with a passion. And the White House will go after monopolies. If you gouge consumers, the White House, it's like the PMO here, will go after meat packers. They will go after salmon can packers. I mean, they go after everyone. In
Microsoft,
Canada,
anything. My antitrust violations, yeah, that's their deal.
all the time. In Canada, we ask the Competition Bureau to conduct studies that last months, sometimes years. The investigation around bread, gentlemen, is still ongoing after 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention the biggest monopoly, which I think is the biggest problem in Canada, is getting information out, and that's the media monopoly here that is funded by the government as well, to control that national voice, right? So it's outlets like ourselves and yourself out there that are, like the independent voices that are trying to crack through this, and especially in the voting population. We had Ian Carney on from, he's an older journalist there, and he's talking about, like the boomers aren't getting this message, your message, and that through CBC and that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, before the tax credit program, I felt we were well served by the media. You picked your sources, and of course, I mean, I've always accepted the fact that the CBC was biased. If you listen to the BBC, if you listen to ABC in Australia, NPR in the US, they're all biased. I mean, crown corporations are inherently biased, and I've accepted that. And as a francophone living outside of Quebec, I actually kind of need Radio-Canada, and I actually support public broadcasting. The issue that we have now in Canada is that we have now most private sector media is subsidized by the government, and they've all become mini CBCs, because they cover all the same news the same way now. If you notice, especially in food, they all do the same way. And of course, the other biggest problem that we have is that it is a partisan issue. We all know that one party doesn't want to continue the tax credit program, and it has become a partisan issue. And you can feel that mainstream media understands what's at stake whenever they come out with a story. And that's why you're seeing all these stories that are very anti-American, very pro-Carney, very pro-liberal. And I don't think it's going to end anytime soon, unfortunately.
Ian, for the final question.
I feel like I want to ask you again about supply management. I know this is like a bit more, something that we just beat to death. I'm going to have to do it. Last time we spoke... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was 25 years ago, I was all for reforming supply management. I was seen as an extremist. Now I'm more like a moderate compared to some people out there.
Yeah.
And they want, I don't know about, I don't know what your situation is, Ian, but I would say that a lot of people just want to abolish the darn thing. And I can understand why.
Yeah. Well, last time we spoke, it was we talked about supply management, and it was, it was quite a dark conversation, I think, where you talk about how they intimidate
There's nothing
politicians
bright
and
about supply management.
but I mean, even darker than usual, and how it's, they have the whole thing sewn up, and they're kind of like the masters of the political scene. These dairy farmers.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely. There's no transparency. They're trying to control the narrative. They control politicians for sure. I mean, Prime Minister Carney yesterday declared 3 by-elections. One of them is Chicoutimi, which is likely going to be the most contested. Who's the Liberal candidate? The president of the Quebec Dairy Farmers Association. Yep. I'm not making this up, gentlemen.
What I was going to say was, we had that conversation then, and it felt like, the conversation ended, and I thought, anyway, okay, so this is the rest of my life, all of our lives. It's just going to be this forever. But then today, I got a feeling that you're a little bit more optimistic that maybe there is change afoot, or that it's possible to change it, because you're saying almost that it's just going to collapse on itself. Have you changed your perspective, or has that always been your view?
Not really. I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic because I don't want your listeners to want to shoot themselves, after the show. I want to be optimistic because I do feel like if we don't do anything, if we do nothing, I think the dairy sector will eventually collapse. But the dairy sector won't say that. The problem is that when you're managing a declining scenario, I don't see any positives at all. And so I'm hopeful, and frankly, I don't know if you saw my X feed last week, there were 2 dairy farmers that reached out for a chat. And I can't name them, obviously, but they get it. They get absolutely what I'm trying to do. And because they're 31, 33 years old, they have kids, they see that there are some major issues with supply management, and they were willing to share all of their experiences with me, and I'm grateful for that. But I can't name them. And then both of them were from Quebec, but they're concerned about the future of their business, and I would be as well.
But sorry, just my last word here. If it went the way of New Zealand, these people would stand to be, exotically wealthy. Theoretically, they could massively increase their income if we were to trade with the world.
Yeah, but the reality is that they're not in New Zealand, and frankly, I think Canada is an incredible country with tremendous potential. The only problem is that we are our own worst enemy, especially when it comes to policy.
Do you think the marketing board has more power than the dairy farmers themselves? Because who's more interested in keeping the supply management in place? The dairy farmers or the board itself, which manages around like almost $100 million a year. I mean, that in itself is an organization that wants to self-preserve, no different than the mainstream media, which is dying. If you look at CBC's numbers, they're dying, literally 1.67 audience on their television. And yet the machine wants more money. The machine seems to be more interested. The reporters not so much, maybe. And I just question is whether the dairy farmers are seeing the writing on the wall, but the marketing board doesn't want to give up that power and money.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head, Jim. I mean, and I've been defending dairy farmers for quite a long time. It's always hurtful to see people just bashing dairy farmers. I know what they mean. But dairy farmers aren't the problem. It's the boards. The boards are controlling everything. When I testified at Senate last year against Bill 202, which protected supply management during any future trade talks, I was against it, obviously. I thought it was a stupid bill. It was at Senate, and they asked me to testify against it. And dairy farmers bust 48 dairy farmers And they actually had rows of dairy farmers. I was walking in Senate to testify. It's intimidation with T-shirts and everything. But dairy farmers didn't organize that bus. Boards did. Boards are the one that are controlling the information, and they're controlling everything. So boards are the problem, which is why when Mr. Carney talks about interprovincial trade barriers, I've been hammering that message. If you really want to bring down barriers between provinces, deal with supply management, because quotas are managed by provinces. Supply management is in and of itself a barrier.
We do thank you for your time. We booked a half an hour. We want to be respectful of your time because I'm sure you got lots of other stuff to do. But man, we'd love to have you on a lot more. People love you, and the information, the truth is what people seek, right? And they're not getting that from mainstream media. That part is pretty much obvious, right? So that's why they're turning to, shows like ours, yourself, and lots of other independent media out there trying to do the hard work and the heavy lifting without a budget of $1.6 billion, right?
That's right, exactly. We're trying to become millionaires one day at a time.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Listen, thank you for what you do.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
And you, thank you.
As always, got our numbers over 1,000, pushed us up over 1,000 watching live. Impressive.
That's the power. I would call the food professor, I would call him a public intellectual.
Yeah.
And he's doing the job of a public intellectual. It's just such a shame that he is in a minority of, some would say, one in this country. But I mean, he's certainly in a small minority of public intellectuals who take their responsibility seriously.
But what's even more telling is that it's the independent outlets like us that are platforming him now, not the mainstream media. Like, he's not on CBC right now, right? Why? Because he shoots down the narrative, right? Like, he actually says, no, this is why it's happening, not what they're pushing, right? So if they had any credibility, they would be platforming, because he's probably one of the leading experts in food in Canada.
And also, very charismatic and knows how to explain things.
Good communicator, absolutely.
That's
great
not something that you usually get from academics, even though their job is supposed to be communication.
Well, we're going to get
But
right
it's
back.
People like that, this is what I mean. I was talking about Andrew Coyne and like my reluctance to cut the flour down. Because even though I think Andrew Coyne doesn't do a particularly good job at what he does, at least he's trying, whereas Sylvain Charlebois is trying and doing a good job. But I just think Canada needs lots more people like that, But we often talk about the differences between Canada and the UK or Canada and the US. They've got loads of people like that in those societies. It helps.
We have a desert compared to them. We're going to go to this next story, but maybe you want to size Ian up a little bit there, Nick. Just kind of balance us out here. We were just doing this story before we went to the food professor here, and again, we thank the food professor for coming on. Canada can make nuclear weapons quickly and in secret, report explains. Is anybody going to trust Canada to make nuclear weapons? What we just saw with the NATO thing, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? We have a Chinese national or a spy there, or a Canadian national with Chinese origin now standing in a courtroom there in Belgium. Now we're talking about Canada can make nuclear weapons, and we have the IRGC here in Canada. Are they going to be the ones giving access?
Sam Cooper.
What's that?
We talked about Sam Cooper and Gary Clement, who are getting on just Operation Sidewinder and all the rest of that stuff. Yeah, there's lots of stuff like that.
I don't even want Canada making nuclear weapons with our history of Gary and this next lady in the next story here, Lena Diab. Lena Diab. I don't know the level of incompetence. I don't know what the bar is. You know what I mean? There's some people out there saying that Carney just wants people that obey, and the incompetence actually is a good thing, so that they just are completely servile. This one here from Hollywood and Blacklocks here. Don't need foreign comics. What? You just wonder, what the heck is this headline, right? Immigration Minister Lena Diab's department in internal report questioned the point of a program that allowed thousands of jobless foreign actors, comedians, and artists to enter Canada in the name of cultural enrichment. What? Who thought this was a great idea? The purpose of the program is ambiguous. That's from the report. What? So it writes itself.
Yeah.
It's like Monty Python is looking after the government of Canada, and it's just all the idiots in the Monty Python skit are running Canada. Data showed in a decade from 2014 to 2024, 7,785 people were admitted. Evidence suggests the program's vaguely defined objectives and lack of measurable outcomes. That's common theme, right? That's systemic. Lack of measurable outcomes has led to varied interpretation of its purpose. Really? Most immigrants let in through the cultural program, Chinese 31%, Iranian 14%, Indian 7%. Most listed occupations in creative and performing arts, including self-described painters, sculptors, coaches, photographers, actors, and comedians.
It's a good job that our two primary foreign adversaries, the Chinese Communist Party and the theocrats and murderers that run Iran, are so stupid, like dribbling, mouth open, dribbling, sort of crawling around like cavemen. It's such good fortune that they are that stupid, because if they were even a little bit smart, they might do something like, I don't know, send spies in through this system and call them painters.
Painters,
you know?
photographers.
But good job they're really, because Chinese and Iranians, they're well known for being stupid, aren't they? So it's a really good job that they're stupid. Otherwise, that might be a national security risk.
Ready for this shocking line here? Auditors noted while few successful applicants wound up on welfare, about 3% after 5 years, most had trouble finding work, and most had a median income of $19,500. So living off the system. Yeah, you know, you come in.
Patrons.
So if you want to get into Canada, one way, we showed you that story, you tell them you're a part of the LGBTQ spectrum. Second way, now this one is great, I'm an artist. Joe Biden's son was an artist. Hunter Biden was selling his paintings for enormous sums. And then now he can't sell them for some strange reason. Not sure why he can't sell paintings. So if you want to buy a painting on the cheap, Hunter Biden is, got cheaper paintings now. But he's got great teeth.
Hunter Biden original.
He's got great teeth, right?
But again, I mean, the first priority, surely, of an immigration policy is national security. I just have to hammer it home. Like, there are already a million ways to get dodgy people into Canada. If you are not even a naughty state, but also like non-state actors like terror groups and stuff like that. There are already so many ways to get people in by just claiming that you're bisexual in a country where that means like you'd be persecuted or something like that. Show them, like we talked about, we looked at that report. Show them a Facebook post where you like say that you're gay and you hate the government, and say, look, I've posted this in my country. They're going to kill me now. That is enough to get your asylum. In many cases, that's enough to get your asylum application processed. So we can already get almost anybody in the door that way. But now it's like, just in case that's too hard, just in case you don't want to write that Facebook post, you can also just say that you're a painter and just like say that you're in the expressionist style. You like the style of Jackson Pollock or something like that. Just splash loads of paint all over a piece of paper and say, I'm a painter. Look.
I think you're being too sophisticated. I think you just have to say, I'm a creative guy. My art is non-art.
I've got some ideas, man.
If you haven't had enough, Canada could see a large influx of Haitian refugees as U.S. ends protected status. And I said that when Trump won that election, when he was like the biggest deportation ever. I said, you know where they're going to go? They're going to go to Canada. Refugee groups are warning Canadians there could be an increase in Haitians claiming asylum in the country after the U.S. brought to an end a protected status of more than 300,000 people from the Caribbean nation. France Andre from the Action Committee for People Without Status said there could be huge demand for illegal crossings into Canada. Canada cannot even support the people that it has right now. Like, Canada's in trouble. Like, absolutely. Like what the food professor just said, that was shocking in itself. He said, would you say Aldi? They don't want to come to Canada because they don't see it as a profitable venture because there's no money. Canada is slipping into like third world status because of, we can trace it all back to one thing: failed policies of 11 years, the liberal leadership policies of 11 years, which are not changing. And then the media that protects, acts as shield and spear, don't cover what the food professor says. They don't cover the stuff we cover. Go look at their website on any given day. If you watch this show on a regular basis, on a daily basis, you are likely in the top 5% of Canadians on knowledge of what's going on in this country. If you're on the CBC, I bet you they don't even know what's going on. They have no idea what's going on, other than that they know they must get up in the morning and hate Donald Trump and who they're supposed to cancel today, and then whose rights are being trampled in some kind of spectrum of some kind. That's what they know on any given basis, and how Mark Carney is the greatest thing, that's the greatest leader. Some people are saying the greatest leader ever. Some people are saying Mark Carney could be the biggest financial guru the world has ever seen. If you just look at his bank account, it's growing exponentially. Yours, not so much.
But just to, like, what I already said this to the food professor, but just to hammer it home, Aldi operates in former communist countries controlled by the Soviet Empire, countries like Hungary and Poland. And it also operates in China, which is a present day communist country. So it's kind of, that was quite a shocking thing to hear. To think that the people of Hungary apparently have better, they're in a better situation. It's more attractive to a company when it comes to investment, because Hungarians are more likely to have disposable income. I mean, that's quite concerning, isn't it? Lots of people are talking about that nuke story, by the way. I think maybe we, in the comments, maybe we rushed past that, because that was at the weekend, that story. It's actually a really good article. I have to credit where it's due. It's by the CBC. And I would very strongly recommend that people read it. And it's kind of surreal to read it, because the reporter, Evan Dyer, he's sort of explaining how easily Canada could produce a nuclear weapon because of the nature of the reactors, and also because we have uranium. We could do it in a way that, the anti-proliferation organizations around the world, they wouldn't necessarily know that we'd done it. We talk about all this, like the secrecy involved. But it's quite surreal and weird to read about that in the Canadian, in the context of Canada. But it's an interesting article. It's worth reading.
And just like we said, the media, they're just like, what's the old joke there? They're handing out money, and the media is like, we'll take more. So here's the Toronto Star. Parliament must maintain secret subsidies for the Toronto Star to promote ethical governance. Okay? Social cohesion. Its publisher has written MPs. Payroll rebates of $29,750 per newsroom employee set to roll back to pre-COVID rates this winter. So they're going to cut that subsidy in half. A single journalist covering a municipal college, hospital, school board, or local development project ensures accountability. If the Star acted, or the other publications acted in the interests of Canadians, maybe this would be an easier argument to sell. Subsidy payments to individual publishers are confidential under the terms of the $600 million media bailout approved by Parliament in 2019. Repeal Bill C-18. Why don't they ask for that? Why don't they ask for the repeal of Bill C-18? Anyway.
This is interesting. I'm reading about the rest of this. Just trying to lobby here, but it's basically an attempt at blackmail. Really, it's a species of blackmail. It's like, either do this or our democracy will collapse if you don't give us all this taxpayers' money.
Canada is a playground for oligopolies and marketing boards. Again, I think, like that point we made with the food professor at the end. Who really wants the supply management? It's the group, the supply management, the group itself, that gets $100 million from the dairy farmers. Somebody, I think, posted on X there that said the food professor is full of crap. The dairy management, supply management doesn't get any government money. No, they get it from you. They get it from you. They get it from you because it's higher prices. And then they take a piece off the top. It's like a tax to the dairy farmers. The dairy farmers pay that to the marketing board. Then this marketing board has $100 million each year to play with. And then they dole it out to some of these outlets like that. And they dole it out. And then they write, nice stories for them. And this marketing cartel is the most powerful cartel or management supply group in Canada. They spend $9 per Canadian every year. Think of that power. And we covered this story yesterday. But
they have they've acquired politicians. That's what he alleges. That's how powerful they
are. This MP, Rachel Doncho there says, talking about the ER doctors. We talked about it yesterday. We covered this story. You can go back and watch it. I won't go into too much depth in it, but it's a serious thing. Like Ian and I, our outlets covered ER closures in British Columbia. It's almost like, okay, which one are we closing this week? Right? Sometimes we were doing, what was that? What was the record? 138? You'd be better off. I think it was it Merritt or what? Which one was it? Or Oliver, I think it was.
I think Zoyu's had a record. Oh yeah, Oliver.
Yeah. I think you'd be better off to go and check if they were open than you were to see if they were closed. It was easier to find out if they were open. There was that many closures in Oliver. And then Lillooet, 100-mile house, 150-mile house. Some of them were 3-hour drives. Hey, don't worry about it. It's a 3-hour drive on a winter road. You'll be fine.
Might as well if you're in Oliver, you might as well just drive over the border. Maybe an ambulance will come get you. They have an obligation, don't they?
And now we're going to talk about the big one we were going to talk about. It's just the war of words. The progressives, it's always been a war of words. And we're going to kind of show you a bit of a theme on that. The war of words and just this virtuous, right? And I think that's how some of the mind virus captured so many on CBC and that, because it gives you the right to put a badge on, right? You get to put a badge on, you get to judge somebody else, and you get to then say that person, and you get to cancel them. It's like the old posse days, right? Everybody got deputized, and you went out there and you started ratting people. And we're going to show this next bit of this show is going to really be about, the war of words and how you use words. And here's Canada's sports minister asked about if they'd follow the lead of Alberta there and the United States on recognizing biological females for sporting events.
So as you know, the International Olympic Committee recently updated its gender eligibility rules, and following the lead of Alberta and other jurisdictions, it will be limiting participation in all women's events to, quote, biological females. And I believe that determination will be based on one-time chromosomal testing. Are you in the process of updating the relevant federal policies relating to the development of Olympic-level athletes and Olympic preparedness to bring them in line with the IOC and jurisdictions like Alberta?
Thank you for the question. The federal government is not following the lead of the province of Alberta, but we do work with international sport organizations, international federations, to ensure that athletes are protected and that sport systems are as inclusive as possible. I want to state clearly on the record that I think oftentimes this conversation is being used to disclude people rather than include people from sport, and I find that disingenuous. Canada will continue to build a sport system where everybody has the opportunity to play, compete, and be part of the team. We respect the decisions made by other levels of government and other organizations.
Was that Mark Carney answering that question?
He's right. It has been used to exclude people. That's accurate. It's been used to exclude girls and women from sport because they won't compete against a male for obvious reasons. If you were a female, why would you do that? So yeah, it has been used to exclude people from sport. That's completely accurate. But if, as I suspect, he's meaning that it excluded trans people, I don't think it ever has really. If you're born a male and then identify as a female, nobody's going to exclude you from this, the male category of sports. Nobody would do that. I haven't seen any evidence of that.
Compete in the category that your body was designed for and has advantages for.
Is there evidence that I mean, maybe there is somewhere, but I've not seen it. That doesn't seem to be the argument. The argument, and where the word exclusion comes in, is I was born a man, a male, a boy, whatever. Now I identify as a girl, as of, not so long ago, in many cases, and I want to go and run like 1,500 meters against, or 100 meters against a load of girls, and then those people being told no. I mean, that's not exclusion, is it? Talk about disingenuous. He used the word disingenuous. I mean, let's put that in a dictionary for the definition of the word disingenuous.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, BC Conservatives being told to drop First Nations and replace it with Indigenous, Aboriginal, or Indian. And that's according to the report. The leader of the BC Conservatives reportedly instructing her MLA to stop using the term First Nations, replace it with Indigenous, Aboriginal, Indian. And reporter Rob Shaw explains in an article published on Monday that the term First Nation is used by the party's leadership as the language from the left. And again, it's all about words, man.
But it's funny that this is what makes the headlines, and this is what produces the outrage, rather than repeated use, including by members of the British Columbia government, of racist terms. I would have to say it, racist insults, like settler, calling people settlers. People who've been in Canada for, in some cases, like 300 or 400 years, whose family's been in Canada, and you refer to those people as settlers. What a repulsive, racist insult that is to throw at somebody. But that is never the topic of conversations. Oh, colonists and colonizers, these vicious words, these like epithets and terms of abuse,
occupationists.
Yeah, all sorts of incendiary terms. But that's not what's under discussion. It's some daft story about how Indigenous or Aboriginal is preferable to First Nations. I mean, Indian, in terms of Indian, that is a pretty daft thing to say. I would obviously point that out as being obvious, as sort of legacy of misidentification, and the first European explorers who thought that they'd landed in what's now Indonesia, in the Indies. So they wrongly used that term. I mean, okay, I can understand why you might not be interested in that. And like, don't use that term. Yeah, I totally understand that. But complaining about Aboriginal or Indigenous, I mean, Indigenous, I would even argue with Indigenous, and I have done many times, because it doesn't actually make sense. Logically, it doesn't really make sense to call First Nations people Indigenous, because Indigenous suggests that they've always been in North America, but that's not true. They came from Asia and ultimately Africa, as we all did.
We're going to play this clip from our sponsor of our show right now. We have a sponsor on our show, our first sponsor too. It is the interview I did with Murray Wilson there. We're going to play about 30 seconds of this, 45 seconds of it, from the clip BC is Burning. And we're going to put the link in there, and I want you to go there and watch that full video, BC is Burning. And we ask you that you subscribe. You can play that clip, Nick, there. Ask you that you subscribe to that video so they can monetize that. They need to get to 1,000 subscribers so they can monetize that. They're working on their second documentary, and they want to continue doing good work. It's on climate change versus forestry management. If you could play that clip there, go ahead.
10 o'clock at night, you could see the flames up the hills. By 4 in the morning, this whole hillside, all these mountains, the skies were redder than I've ever seen before.
Every summer, the fires come. And every year, they're hotter, faster, and harder to stop.
This fire is a result of literally a spark that traveled 3.8 kilometers across the lake. Mind-boggling.
Homes burn, highways close, families flee. But this crisis didn't come out of nowhere.
We can draw some
Go watch that. Arm yourself with information. Forestry management. Forestry management. If we want to continue doing what we're, facing wildfires every year, losing homes, we continue going down the same path. We had the forest minister on as well. Forestry management, every time we lose a mill, and we're just talking about British Columbia here, every time we lose a mill, we lose forestry management because they're the ones managing the forest. Since 2023, we've lost 21 mills in British Columbia alone. And recently, we just lost the second pulp mill here in BC in the last, I think, 6 months. So the one in Prince George just went down, the Northwood Pulp Mill. And then the one in Cowichan, where I interviewed the mayor there, North Cowichan mayor. And that is the Domtar Pulp Mill there. Every time we lose a mill, we lose forest management. And they'll tell you that it's all climate change. They told you that for Jasper. It's forest management. The video, you need to watch this video. It'll give you so much good information. And go watch the interview I did with Marie Wilson as well. Well worth your time. Stop letting them lie to you. Talking about lies. Want some lies? Fauci is blowing up the internet. Fauci is literally blowing up the internet. And there were so many clips I could have put in, the mainstream media fawning over him. This is where media is supposed to push back against. Power says do this. Media's job is to say how high. But no, media wasn't doing that. Just like, oh my God, thank you for your service. Thank you for this. And, as he dictated all these rules. Here's Bobby. We'll play one clip here with Bobby as the diary. They got a hold of Fauci's diaries, and some of the stuff that Fauci was writing in his diary completely contradicted what he was saying on television.
Tony Fauci's problem was this. There's a little-known federal law that says you cannot give an emergency use authorization to a vaccine if there is any medication approved for any purpose that is shown effective against the target disease. So if Tony Fauci or anybody had admitted that hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin are effective against COVID, it would have been illegal for them to give the emergency use authorizations to the vaccines, and they could never have gotten them approved. And it would have been, a $200 billion enterprise that would have collapsed.
There you go. That's good. That was pretty shocking to say, because, remember when they talked about ivermectin and I'm not going to pronounce that, hydrochloroquine or whatever it's called there, and they talked about it as alternative medicines and that, and they say, nope, doesn't work, and they did this whole thing against Joe Rogan and all that. And then if what Bobby's saying there is true, they discredited that so they could have emergency use authorization. It's shocking.
Are they cheeky? I haven't dug deep into this story, but the thing that screams out at me is what a sick man he was in terms of his narcissism. Like, astonishing. Like almost on the diagnosable.
Yeah.
Solipsism.
Godlike.
Of this ridiculous little man.
Here's the Rand Paul put this out and says, Fauci's own diary in his own words show he knew the lab leak theory was credible from the very first weeks of the pandemic. 10 to 12 scientists on his call believed deliberate insertion was possible. He wrote that the wet market was never the real source. He spent the next 2 years telling American people the opposite, smearing anyone who disagreed as a conspiracy theorist. What they did to people, the people that were fired, the people that were made to suffer here in Canada as well. The people that were made examples of, the people that had their lives destroyed. Trudeau, that said, you will not ride on a train, a plane, or a bus. And then he said, I didn't make nobody take that vaccine after. The stuff that was said. And in Canada, how much accountability are we looking at? They're sealing the records for 15 years. These are your records. They're literally your records. And they're not letting you have access to them for 15 years. And in the United States right now, there is a storm brewing. And this is a mega storm, because this is the poster child that Bonnie Henry and them all look to, right? The all-seeing, all-knowing Fauci. Remember he said the words, I'm going to see if I can get this right. I am the science. Pretty sure he said that. And we had reporters working here at the time that argued with, and they said that the science is decided. Science doesn't decide anything. Science is literally the pursuit of knowledge. That's science.
Well, a lot of people did the work for him as well, didn't they? A lot of like know-nothing celebrities and that kind of thing talked about, and obviously left-wing political operators talked about Fauci as though he was some kind of master of science or something, like the grand
wizard. They did the
wizard
same thing locally
of
here
science.
with our own Dr. Bonnie Henry. They glorified her. Literally, at the time, and I'm a CPA, I asked a whole bunch of other accountants, I said, how is this not a conflict of interest? While she has the most powerful position in British Columbia, basically controlling everybody's lives, she was literally selling a book, barbecue sauce, seeds, and there was 4 things. I can't remember the 4th one on the top of my head now. Seeds, barbecue sauce, a book, plus a winery, but there was something else she was pitching at the same time. And she was using her celebrity status, shoes, a line of shoes, that's what it was, shoes. She would actually go on CTV and parade these shoes around, and she would dance around with her shoes. Meanwhile, Canadians were stuck at home, or British Columbians were stuck at home. They couldn't see their loved ones, some of the loved ones that were perishing. They couldn't even say goodbye to them. While she was parading shoes around, hawking shoes on mainstream media. And the media is just like, oh, oh my God, she's so good.
Yeah, I mean that was like the Temu Fauci, wasn't it? That experience. But the Fauci, I'm just looking at some of the extracts here. This is literally the words of Dr. Fauci. He says, "It is not hyperbole to say that today I am the most famous and talked about person in the country, and one of the most recognizable in the world." And Barbara Streisand calls him up asking for vaccine advice, which he's delighted about. Meets Julia Roberts, says she's amazingly beautiful. I mean, it's astonishing, isn't it, that he was so lacking in dignity and just integrity, really, as a human being.
Forced people to take something, at least in the United States, the military hired back all their fired service people with full payment, like back pay. Ian and I interviewed several people. Like they literally fired a guy in finance in British Columbia government, working at home. He was literally working at home, not going into the office, and they fired him because he wouldn't take the vaccine. Make that make sense, hey? We interviewed the guy. They literally fired him, who was working from home because obviously he was going to infect himself. That's how much coercion. Then they said, we never forced anybody. What was that? You literally took his ability to make money away from him while he was working at home. I know a nurse that was fired on mat leave. I listened to the phone call. They fired her on mat leave. She wasn't even working. They fired her on mat leave. Not fired her, but they terminated her. Yeah, they fired her, terminated her on mat leave, and she wasn't going back to work for a year. So they needed to reach out and fire her while she was on mat leave. I listened to the call. Here's Jesse Waters. One day we'll grow up and we'll be Jesse Waters. We'll have a show as big as Jesse does. He's got better graphics than us. We do have a globe.
Bigger head than us.
He's got a bigger head?
He's got a mega head. Mega dome.
Mega dome? Let's play it.
You know how they always say you should never read a little girl's diary? Well, they never said anything about a grown man's. We got our hands on Dr. Anthony Fauci's diary. And viewer warning, we're going to read from it, and it's going to make you very angry. Now, I know what you're thinking. It feels a little invasive reading another person's diary, but this isn't just anyone. This is a man responsible for devastating lockdowns and for funding the type of experiments that may have caused 1 million American deaths. If there's a theme from this diary, which is over 1,000 pages, it is this. Dr. Anthony Fauci is dishonest, almost always wrong, and is intoxicated with fame. As thousands of Americans were dying every day, here's what America...
You can go watch that whole clip if you want. Here's what the Toronto Star put out. Remember this? I couldn't believe it when I read this at the time. Remember this newspaper? Nick's going to put it up in a sec here. Look at that. If an unvaccinated person catches it from someone who's vaccinated, boo-hoo, too bad. I have no empathy left for the willfully unvaccinated. Let them die. Front page, Toronto Star. I honestly don't care if they die from COVID, not even a little bit. Unvaccinated patients don't deserve ICU beds. Remember when they were doing that?
Yeah. I can remember it being talked about openly by
And they
people
wanted
in
to
positions of
like,
authority as well. Why should we treat these people if they come to hospital? I can remember all of that.
I can say that Ian and I pushed back on this. We did stories from the trucker convoy. We did for the Okanagan. We interviewed them. We got tons of hate mail. We interviewed people protesting out here on the bridge here. We did what we were supposed to do. We sat on those calls with Bonnie Henry and pushed the button relentlessly to get a question in. And did we get questions? No. We got a sore finger. Push the button so hard sometimes we got a hernia, as one of the viewers said once. Push the button so hard, almost got a hernia. These are some of the things they did. I don't know if I put this clip, and I didn't put the clip, and they were arresting people. Gavin Newsom there had people arrested on a beach. The guy was on the beach by himself. It's not the right shot there. We're on the beach by himself, and 5 cops show up to arrest him on a beach. It was a show of power. I mean, there was nations that did this in the past to demonstrate power, right? And they did the same thing for the Freedom Truckers. Tamara Lich, yes, there's a post from Tamara. I didn't put it in, or maybe I did. No, I didn't. She's a reporter now for I think the Rebel, and she was out yesterday, and somebody called in that Tamara Lich was breaking she's on house arrest, but she's allowed to go out for work. But so the cops came and checked on her and said, "You were here, here, and here." She said, "Well, I stopped at the garage to go to the washroom. Is that okay?" Got their badge. They called it in. They have a badge. You know what I mean?
But this Toronto Star as well, that they were the people begging for money, or not begging for money, sort of guilt tripping the government, demanding money, your money. You might say to yourself, "Oh, I don't read the Toronto Star. I don't buy it. I don't go on their website, whatever." That may be true, but you still pay for it. You're subscribed. The Liberal Party of Canada made you a subscriber to the Toronto Star. So this is.
Look what they wrote.
This is your baby.
Put that
it's all
screen back
of
up,
ours.
Nick.
We own this institution, even though it is clearly not morally suitable. It doesn't have the moral sense.
The Toronto Star
to receive our money.
This headline or whatever, their front page. There you go. Pretty impressive, eh?
Well, that's yours. You pay for this newspaper, mate. As do you all.
I like Joe Kernan on CNBC. He pushes back all the time. He's one of the guys that's always pushed back. I'm just going to play a small clip from Joe here.
How about your buddy, your buddy Fauci that I've asked you about in the past? You've defended him quite a bit.
Look, I mean, I don't know what you're referring to in terms of defending him.
I've asked him about whether he orchestrated a cover-up of the lab origin because of his involvement in making gain-of-function research possible again in China, which he did. He knew that would come back to haunt him, and then basically told his colleagues, go with the natural origin. It was obvious 3 years ago, Scott, to me anyway, and everybody else, that he orchestrated that.
Yeah, look, we've talked about this in a show. I think the evidence in terms of whether this was human or naturally derived, I think the side of the ledger that speaks to this potentially coming out of a lab has grown over time. And we haven't had any new evidence suggesting that this came out of a natural origin or spillover.
The latest stuff that came out about him,
it was disappointing.
Didn't he know that it was likely it was from the lab?
That's good. How you just say, "Oh, it's disappointing." You know what I mean? When it's disappointing is how you were so adamant in the past defending this crap, right? You didn't question authority. You just went along with it, and now it's disappointing, right?
Yeah, it's always the same, isn't it? I expect your understanding and your forgiveness for things like that. However, if it's something that the other side does or did 10 years ago or 20 years ago, then I expect you to bang your desk and be furious.
Here's Tamara Litch put this one on. Anthony Fauci, a beta male drunk on his own league, on his own ego. I can't help but wonder, would the Freedom Convoy have been necessary if the scientists had knowingly lied to the world? I mean, it was this domino thing. We've seen this so many times. It's starting to break, though, right? Because they've had this message, and you see it go across the Western nations there in the past. And right now, you're seeing it with social media, right? Australia, France, UK, Canada, banning 16 and under on social media, cutting, like going after X and different things, and this cancel culture. It's still alive in those countries, but America obviously has busted all that down, right? But during COVID, basically you knew that if somebody did something in New York City, like Como there, did something, you can expect Bonnie Henry to stand at the podium within 24 hours exacting the same punishment from you.
Well, the order was often China would do it, then the Europeans would do it, like Boris Johnson, the British would come out and do it. Then the Americans might have a go, and then you would get Bonnie Henry. It was like cascade, wasn't it? A concatenation.
And we hung on.
And eventually Bonnie Henry
to the bitter
came out
end
like,
here in British Columbia.
we're going to do it.
We hung on to the bitter end here in British Columbia.
It's because British Columbia believes the science.
This is, Julie's available. Is Julie available? Can you show Julie?
That studies show that the industrial carbon price adds 0.
There you go. That's how many days of work I missed. That many. During the whole thing. 0. Karma's a B. Here's just in Cracker Barrels. Woke CEO Julie Feiss Massino stepping down after completely destroying the company. I mean, it's all over the place. The Cracker Barrel lady, when she tried to woke it up, Budweiser with Bud Light, and their what you call it. I think Trump had a go at that at the White House Correspondents' Center. Dylan Mulvaney, when they decided to take what's that, redneck beer, and then put some marketing to it.
What was the eventual number? It was enormous, wasn't it, of what they lost? It was absolutely gigantic.
Market cap wise, it was massive. And then and you got to think of the Bud Light commercials were some of the best commercials ever, like in the Super Bowl, the Clydesdales, and you know what I mean? Like some of them had the best commercials always, Bud Light. Some people drank Bud Light just for their bloody commercials.
Well, you wouldn't drink it for the taste, would you?
And the new clown, the New York City mayor, Mandami there, who everybody seems to really self-adore or whatever. The left-leaning media, this guy is the god. This is going to be, get ready, the train wreck is about to leave the station. They're opening up 5 government-run grocery stores. Woo woo!
Well, at least people get to see why it's not a good idea. Sometimes I think each generation has to learn the same lesson again and again and again.
This is where we get a little goofy because we're in there. But usually our show is 2 hours. Obviously, the food professor had a half hour in there, so that's why we're almost done here. This one here, we've talked to Harman Bangu here, MLA here in British Columbia. He's the shadow critic for transportation here in British Columbia. And we've seen these accidents pile up all over Canada and in the United States. That one horrific one in the United States where the guy did a U-turn on an interstate. I think he decapitated 5 people in Florida there. And we've seen these accidents. You've seen it on the side of the road. I'm sure many of you experienced truckers, wiped out all over the place. And Trump has done something to kind of because they said there's not enough truckers. That was the other excuse they used. There's not enough truckers. That's why we gave all these licenses to people that can't speak English, can't read some road signs, that we needed truckers. Well, here's a good idea. Let's play the clip.
The administration will soon take historic action to get illegal alien truck drivers who are just killing a lot of people. They can't read signs. Many of them are on drugs or alcohol, and they shouldn't be driving these things, and they're They came in totally illegally, and we don't want them, but they are driving all over American roadways, and we're going to replace them with proud American veterans who are going to take our veterans, who are going to make them, we're going to teach them a lot about driving trucks, and in many cases they know. We're going to say any American.
Basically, if you drove a truck in the military, a heavy truck, then they're going to give you a CDL. And
makes sense.
Makes better sense than giving it to somebody that did. Well, they did the expose in Ontario, where they're literally buying the license. Literally buying the license at half price. Don't need to worry about a test. It's all good. Here you go. And they just would figure out who the instructor was, and they would just work on that one skill so they could pass the driver's test. And there you go. Here's your, what is it, like your 80,000 ton or 80,000 pound vehicle? Give her.
Get yourself driving over the Rockies in Canada.
Driving through stop signs. Driving through stop signs in Humboldt, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, very sad. Although, just looking back on this video that we're talking about, I don't understand what John Rambo has got to do with this. Can you imagine
comedy
Rambo?
stuff?
Oh, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger as well, wasn't it?
It's just that's
Arnie
Patton
would be
there.
a good truck driver.
That's the movie. That little clip there at the bottom. That's from George Patton. There. That's him standing there in front of the American flag. Do you remember that movie, Patton?
Yeah, it's quite a long
Good
one,
movie.
but it's
What's
a good
that?
one, isn't it? Is it Stanley Kubrick?
George C. Scott, wasn't
film.
it? Oh, like the director. George C. Scott was Patton, though.
Yeah, it was a superb performance. Oh no, the screenplay was Francis Ford Coppola. Wow.
Good movie. If you've never watched it, it's a good movie to watch. If you haven't seen
Kubrick.
Patton, it's a good movie. Especially when he rolls up in that Jeep there with the tanks, right? And says, we're going to get us a paper hanging. What is it? Paper hanging Hitler or something like that?
Patton was getting massively off topic, but Patton was a very strange egg. Very, very interesting, weird person, as was Douglas MacArthur. The Americans knocked out a lot of interesting people to lead their war machine.
Thank you to Hepatitis. There's mass verse. What's that?
Epictetus. Did you say hepatitis?
I don't know what I said. Hey, come here for the mispronunciations. I kill it. Massive infrastructure collapse in 7.1 earthquake in Japan. That's pretty massive, actually. So we got a couple little clips here to show you from that earthquake there in Kumamoto. Look at that building shake. There, a lot of them are designed to take that, right? That's good. That's good. And then the Prime Minister there is setting up an emergency response there. Have you ever experienced an earthquake yourself?
Like if a few, 3 or 4 on the Richter scale or whatever the hell it is. So not a real one. No. What about you?
3 that I can think of. Nothing of that magnitude, but 3. I was on CBC, interviewed by CBC once. It felt like a train. I literally thought there was a train going by my house. Like the whole house shook. Like it felt like, you were all of a sudden next to the subway. Do you know what I mean? Like it seemed like, and it went by and it just like shook the heck out of the house. And then once here in Landmark, the blinds all started going click, 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 click. You know what I mean? The building was obviously swaying, right? And then in Hawaii. We were in Hawaii for a holiday, and there was a fairly nothing at that magnitude, because the magnitude gets exponentially bigger. Like, you know, if you go from like a 6.8 to a 7.1, it's massively bigger. Like that scale, it's just like, oh, it's just marginally bigger. No, it's exponentially bigger as that scale goes up, right? So
Yeah, impressive.
yeah,
I mean,
but
it's also not always just earthquakes as well. I mean, other things like explosions can give you the exact same effect. Like, I remember when I was a kid, they blew up near my house. Well, not that near, but within a reasonable range of the family home. They blew up an old Nazi bomb that they found, and I can remember that. That was like a crazy earthquake. But that also shows up, doesn't it, on like the
Richter
size,
scale, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
seismology
seismic, yeah.
devices or whatever.
Yeah, because it measures
Bloody
movement.
Nazis.
But like the house one was like, because it felt like I was living next to the New York subway, and it was like it just like shook the house, like just it was pretty wild. So a magnitude 6 earthquake is 10 times greater than a magnitude 5. A magnitude 7 is 10 times greater than a magnitude 6. So it's exponentially greater, right? Do you know what I mean? Like if you go from a 6 to a 7. It's crazy.
And what was the one that the Fukushima one?
Fukushima,
That was
yeah.
like
that one
crazy,
did
wasn't it? 7.8
that was
or something.
offshore. That was offshore and
It was
created
9.
a tsunami. What's that?
It was 9.
Yeah, it was
Magnitude
a tsunami
9.
though. It was a tsunami that was created.
Yeah.
It wasn't like didn't do a lot of land damage, but the tsunami came in there and flooded the reactors, and which caused the nuclear.
Yeah. And that one, the San Francisco one, which I think of as being like probably the most famous one.
Where the
in
bridges
recent-ish
collapsed. I mean,
history.
the roads collapsed.
That was 1906. It just totally destroyed San Francisco, didn't it? Or
There was
really
a bigger.
damaged it.
There
That
was
was
a big
7.9.
one. There was a bigger one like in the 70s, I think, where a lot of the overpasses collapsed on top of the cars, on the, you know what I mean? Like sections of overpasses collapsed on the sections of the road underneath. Lots of people lost their lives in that one. I can't remember the
Yeah.
exact year for it.
Earthquakes are really quite frightening, especially when you think of the likes of Japan, but also San Francisco, and you know, BC as well. Like all these places are in the ring of fire. It's very, very scary, isn't it, when you think about how vulnerable they are.
Well, we're about to wrap up here, though. If you were trying to order a Model Y in Canada, the order book backlog now is way out there. So now you're looking into January 2027 to see a Model Y for some of them. The Model Y rear-wheel drive, December to January, and all-wheel drive, you're still getting it in December, and the Model Y Performance, you're looking at January 2027. So.
Thought nobody liked them.
Apparently they do. This day in history, we got a few things to wrap up, because that guy was captured yesterday. Maxi, and he got executed.
Mad Max.
Mad Max got executed the next day. So this is execution day for Mad Max.
You know who else nearly got his head chopped off in this disaster, the French Revolution? None other than Thomas Paine.
Oh, wow.
One of the most important pamphleteers in the American Revolution. He decided that he wanted more revolution in his life, went to France and nearly lost his head.
1821, Peru declares independence from Spain. 1914, this is when there was one country. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Austria-Hungary was a big deal at one time.
Very big. Very big
I took a girls' hockey team over there. I spent 21 days in Europe, and we stayed at a bed and breakfast. We played in the big Olympic arena there in Berlin. We stayed at a bed and breakfast in Austria, and I have a Hungarian heritage. And she, from my name, the owner of the bed and breakfast there, because there's a lot of bed and breakfast kind of things, right, for the team. She made a point to let me know that she ruled Hungarians, like the Austrians ruled Hungarians for, I can't remember, like 100 years. I'm just like, okay. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Is there something else I need to do now? 1917, the silent parade in New York City. Thousands of African Americans marched silently down Fifth Avenue to protest lynching and racial violence that was organized by the NAACP. 1945, plane crashed in the Empire State Building. An Army B-25 bomber crashed on the 79th floor of the Empire State Building in heavy fog, killing 14 people. And in 1976, the Tangshan earthquake, one of the deadliest earthquakes in the 20th century. That was in China, magnitude 7.6 to 8.2, killing hundreds of thousands of people.
That's in Hebei province, which is sort of near Beijing. It's quite scary, very densely populated place.
And in 1984, the LA Summer Games opened. I remember watching that one too. And that Games officially opened in LA. Many Eastern Bloc countries, led by the Soviet Union, boycotted.
Yeah. Very political, aren't they, during the Cold War, the Olympics?
Yeah. That's it. That's the show, man. So for the rest of the week, though, just to kind of recap, rest of the week, tomorrow is Wednesday. We have Gary Clement at 11, former RCMP. Talk about foreign interference and all that other stuff. And then on Thursday, we have the ambassador, Pete Hoekstra. That one's not going to be live, though. We're going to record that one. And then on Friday, we got Jasmine Lane is going to join us at 11 o'clock. And then on Tuesday, we already have booked in Martin Pelche. He's going to join us at noon. And I also forgot to mention, Renee's on holidays, so no show today for Renee Merrifield, but she's going to join me on Friday at sometime here. Where's Friday? Friday's the 31st, by the way. Friday at 1 o'clock, Renee Merrifield and myself will be doing Beyond the Ballot. There's a show, basically 2 hours, because the Food Professor was an hour. That's it. That's it. That's all we got. Spread this as far and wide as you can. We hit over 1,000 when we were live here today, so that's great. We got clips now. If you go to the Really Big Show, if you can do that, my favorite right now, go to the reallybigshow.ca, test out the links, tell us which links maybe don't work. I think everything works now because we got the TikToks, as George W. Bush used to say. We got the internets. We got the internets now. We got TikTok, Instagram, and the Island Fox is killing it and she's doing that on a volunteer basis. A credit to her. She was just a fan of the show, which is great. I shouldn't say fan. A supporter of the show, a friend of the show, and we need lots of friends of the show. And then on X, we got X going now, the Really Big Show. You can find us on X. And then I do post the show on my LinkedIn as well. You can go find that. That's linked there as well. We're on Spotify now. If you like to watch on Spotify, we're getting about 250 downloads a show now on Spotify, so we're growing that audience. We're on Rumble as well. Rumble's kind of a ghost town, but I don't know. They say it's going to get better. They say sometimes this is going to be a really big show on Rumble. They say sometimes that.
We need to get on Truth Social, don't we? That's our.
What's that, Truth Social? We don't have that. Blue Sky. I don't know if we have Blue Sky. Do you have Blue Sky?
We've got Blue Sky for the platforms, haven't we? Like Klarna now. But, yeah. Mastodon? What happened to Mastodon?
I don't even know what that is. That's where I'm at.
It's like Blue Sky before Blue Sky.
Blue Sky before there was Blue Sky. There's Parler too, right? Which was when X was a poop hole, and then they created Parler, which was then they banned it, and Apple and them all banned it. So everybody that was accused of wearing a tinfoil hat, turn that into a crown and wear it upside down, because like you were right, you were mainly right all the time. They were wrong. They were wrong. You have a right to speak, even if you're wrong. You have the right to be wrong. That's what I say to people. I have the right to be wrong. And you have the right to get out of my face. How's that? I just want to make sure we don't have any other channels that I'm not missing there. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music too. We've got lots of people listening on Apple Music now. X, Rumble, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We're putting this on Facebook now too. So we're trying to spread it out, and there's a newsletter. If you could go there and sign up, there's a right at the top there. There's a newsletter as well. You can just hit the subscribe button. We just kicked that off as well. And the show there, it's also the stores there now too. Stores on the top menu. You can click that, and you can see what's in the store. And cost of EV tires, damage to roads. I don't know, tires are about the same amount of money. And EVs are not the weight of a semi-truck, so I don't know how they would damage the roads more than a truck. Hey, like a 1-ton pickup weighs more than an EV, so I'm not sure. See, that's the thing.
Maybe if you compare it to, if you compare it to like a normal sedan or something, maybe that's.
Yeah, but if there's 1-ton pickups driving on the road, why would they do any more? You know what I mean? Like, what's the difference? Silliness. Silly. But hey, Rumble just blocked moi. Rumble blocked you? I don't know. Rumble's a ghost town. Rumble. I don't know. I don't know the answer. And I guess like we're a little guilty. Like we answer the comments here most of the time. Yeah, Ian's tie's cool. But we're kind of
That's why we answer, because we get tie comments.
The Island Fox is doing a good job on the Instagram answering comments, but on the Rumble, I guess we're guilty of not. Somebody wants to take over Rumble for us. Put your hand up. Who wants to be the Rumbler? Love to have you. If you want to be the Rumbler, we'll send you a free hat. How's that? Anyway, cheers. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. PST. That's it for the rest of the day, I believe, though. We'll have some clips and stuff like that, but we're trying to do. Spotify shows Joe Rogan streams, no one else will. What? Spotify shows Joe Rogan streams, no one else will. I'm not sure if I understand that. I don't get it.
I think because Spotify bought bought the rights to Joe Rogan or whatever, didn't they? That's why Neil Young freaked out and abandoned Spotify for a couple of years.
Thanks, Red Wine. Red Wine said this is his Canada show. We appreciate you. There you go. And we also want to give a big shout out to the ones in blue there. They're our moderators. We do want to thank them for moderating in our comments, because obviously we're trying to do too many things at once, and we appreciate that as well. There you go. Cheers. God loves you. Stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. PST.